Hey, Chapter 3, Night of Solamnia, The Old Man's Party. Uh-oh, a staff. This chapter's kind of long, so I'm going to stop halfway, and we'll just pick up with the back end of Chapter 3 right after this, so just so you know what we're doing as we go forward. Here we go, Chapter 3. Raistlin leaned forward. He and Caramon exchanged glances as thoughts passed wordlessly between them, and it was a rare moment, for only great personal difficulty or danger ever made the twins' close kinship apparent. Kitiara was their older half-sister. Kitiara would not break her oath unless another stronger oath bound her, Raistlin spoke their thoughts aloud. What does she say? Caramon asked. Tanis hesitated, then licked his dry lips. Her duties with her new lord keep her busy. She sends her regrets and best wishes to all of us, and her love to. Tanis felt his throat constrict. He coughed. Her love to her brothers and to. He paused, then rolled up the parchment. That's all. Love for who? Tasselhoff asked brightly. Ouch! He glared at Flint, who had trod upon his foot. The Kender saw Tanis flesh. Oh, he said, feeling stupid. Do you know who she means? Tanis asked the brothers. What new lord does she talk about? Who knows with Kitiara? Raistlin shrugged his thin shoulders. The last time we saw her was here, in the inn, 5 years ago. She was going north with Sturm. We have not heard from her since. As for her new lord, I say we now know why she broke her oath to us. She has sworn allegiance to another. She is, after all, a mercenary. Yes, Tanis admitted. He slipped the roll back into its case and looked up at Tika. You said this arrived under strange circumstances? Tell me. A man brought it in late this morning. At least I think it was a man, she shivered. He was wrapped head to foot in the clothing of every description. I couldn't even see his face. His voice was hissing-like, and it spoke with a strange accent. Deliver this to Tanis Heffelven, he said. I told him you weren't here and that you hadn't been here for several years. He will be, the man answered. Then he left, Tika shrugged. That's all I can tell you. The old man over there saw him. She gestured to an old man sitting in a chair before the fire. You might ask him if he noticed anything. Tanis turned to look at the old man, who was telling stories to a dreamy-eyed child staring into the flames. Flint touched his arm. Well, here's someone who can tell you more, Dwarf said. Sturm, Tanis said warmly, turning towards the door. Everyone except Raistlin turned. The mage relapsed into the shadowed corner once more. At the door stood a straight-backed figure dressed in full plate armor and chainmail, the symbol of the Order of the Rose on the breastplate. A great many people in the inn turned to stare, scowling. The man was a Solamnic knight, and the Knights of Solamnia had fallen to ill repute up north. Rumors of their corruption had spread even this far south. There were few who recognized Sturm as a long-time former resident of Solus, shrugged and turned back to their drink. Those who did not continued to stare. In these days of peace, it was unusual enough to see a knight in full armor enter the inn, but it was even more unusual to see a knight in full armor that dated back practically to the Cataclysm. Sturm received these stares and accolades due his rank. He carefully smoothed his great thick mustaches, which, being ages-old symbols of the knights, were as obsolete as his armor. He bore the trappings of a Solamnic knight with unquestionable pride, and he had the sword arm and skill to defend that pride. Although people in the inn stared, no one after one look at the knight's calm, cold eyes dared snicker or make a derogatory comment. The knight held the door open for a tall man and a woman heavily cloaked in furs. The woman must have spoken a word of thanks to Sturm, for he bowed in a courtly, old-fashioned manner long dead in the modern world. Look at that, Caramon shook his head in admiration. The gallant knight helps the fair lady. I wonder where he dragged those two up. They're barbarians of the plain, said Tass, standing on a chair, waving his arms to his friend. That's the dress of the Kyushu tribe. Apparently the two plainsmen declined any offers Sturm made to him, for the knight had bowed again and left them. He walked across the crowded inn in a proud and noble air, such as he might have worn walking forward to be knighted by a king. Tanis rose to his feet. Sturm came to him first and threw his arms around his friend. Tanis gripped him tightly, feeling the knight's strong, sinewy arms clasp him in affection. Then the two stood back to look at each other for a brief moment. Sturm hadn't changed, Tanis thought, except there were more lines around his sad eyes and more gray in the brown hair. The cloak was frayed a little more. There were a few more dents in the ancient armor, but the knight's flowing mustaches, his pride and joy, were still as long and sweeping as ever. His shield was polished just as brightly, and his brown eyes were just as warm when he saw his friends. "And you have a beard," Sturm said with amusement. Then the knight turned to greet Caramon and Flint. Tasselhoff dashed off after more ale, Tika having been called away to serve others in the growing crowd. "Greetings, knight," whispered Raistlin from the corner. Sturm's face grew solemn, and he turned to greet the other twin. "Raistlin," he said. The mage drew back his hood, letting the light fall on his face. Sturm was too well bred to let the astonishment show beyond a slight exclamation. His eyes widened. Tanis realized the young mage was getting cynical pleasure out of seeing his friend's discomfort. "Can I get you anything, Raistlin?" Tanis asked. "No, thank you," the mage answered, moving into the shadows once again. "He eats practically nothing," Caramon said in a worried voice. "I think he lives on air." "Some plants live on air," Tasselhoff stated, returning with Sturm's ale. "I have seen them. They hover above the ground. The roots suck up food and water out of the atmosphere." "Really?" Caramon's eyes were wide. "I don't know who's the greater idiot," said Flint in disgust. "Well, we're all here. What's the news?" "All?" Sturm looked at Tanis questioningly. "Kitiara?" "Not coming," Tanis replied steadily. "We were hoping perhaps you could tell us something." "Not I," the knight frowned. "We traveled north together and parted soon after crossing the sea narrows into Old Solimnia. She was going to look for her relatives of her father, she said. That was the last I saw of her." "Well, I suppose that's that," Tanis sighed. "What of your relatives, Sturm? Did you find your father?" Sturm began to talk, but Tanis only half listened to Sturm's tale of his travels in his ancient land of Solamnia. Tanis' thoughts were on Kitiara. Of all his friends, she had been the one he most longed to see. After 5 years of trying to get her dark eyes and crooked smile out of his mind, he discovered that his longing for her grew daily. Wild, impetuous, hot-tempered, the Swordwoman was everything Tanis was not. She was also human, and love between humans and elves always ended in tragedy. Yet Tanis could no more get Kitiara out of his heart than he could his human half out of his blood. Wrenching his mind free of emotions, he began listening to Sturm. "I heard rumors. Some say my father's dead. Some say he's alive." His face darkened. "But no one knows where he is." "Your inheritance?" Caramon asked. Sturm smiled, a melancholy smile that softened the lines in his proud face. "I wear it," he replied simply. "My armor and my weapon." Tanis looked down to see the knight wore a splendid, if old-fashioned, two-handed sword. Caramon stood up to peer over the table. "That's a beauty," he said. "They don't make them like that these days. My sword broke in a fight with an ogre. Theros Ironfell put a new blade on it today, but it cost me dearly." "So you're a knight now?" Sturm's smile vanished. Ignoring the question, he caressed the hilt of his sword lovingly. "According to legend, this sword will break only if I do," he said. "It was all that was left of my father's." Suddenly Tas, who hadn't been listening, interrupted. "Who are those people?" the Kender asked in a shrill whisper. Tanis looked up as the two barbarians walked past their table, heading for empty chairs that sat in the shadows of the corner near the fire pit. The man was the tallest Tanis had ever seen. Caramon, at 6 feet, would come only to the man's shoulder, but Caramon's chest was probably twice as big around, and arms 3 times as big. Although the man was bundled with the furs barbarian tribes live in, it was obviously that he was thin for his great height. His face, though dark-skinned, had a pale cast of one who had been ill or suffered greatly. His companion, the woman Sturm had bowed to, was also muffled in fur-trimmed capes and hood that made it difficult to tell much about her. Neither she nor her tall escort glanced at Sturm as they passed. The woman carried a plain staff trimmed with feathers in barbaric fashion. The man carried a well-worn knapsack They sat down in chairs, huddled in their cloaks, and talked together in low voices. I found them wandering around the road outside of the town, Sturm said. The woman appeared near exhaustion. The man just as bad. I brought them here, told them they could get food and rest for the night. They are a proud people and would have refused my help, I think, but they were lost and tired. Sturm lowered her voice. And there are things on the roads these days that is better not to face in the dark. We met some of those things, asking about a staff, Tanis said, grimly. He described their encounter with Viewmaster Toad. Although Sturm smiled at the description of the battle, he shook his head. A Seeker guard questioned me about a staff outside. Blue crystal, wasn't it? Caraman nodded and put his hand on his brother's thin arm. One of the slimy guards stopped us, the warrior said. They are going to impound Raceland's staff, if you believe that, for further investigation, they said. I rattled my sword into them, and they thought better of the notion. Raceland moved his arm from his brother's touch, a scornful smile on his lips. What would have happened if they had taken your staff? Tanis asked Raceland. The mage looked at him from the shadows of his hood, his golden eyes gleaming. They would have died horribly, the mage whispered, and not by my brother's sword. The half-elf felt chilled. The mage's soft-spoken words were more frightening than his brother's bravado. I wonder what is so important about a blue crystal staff that the goblins would kill to get it. There are rumors of worse to come, Sturm said quietly. His friends moved closer to hear him. Armies gathering in the north, armies of strange creatures, not human. There is talk of war. But what? Who? Tanis said. I've heard the same. As the conversation continued, Tasselhoff yawned and turned away. Easily bored, the Kinder looked around the inn for some new amusement. His eyes went to the old man, still spinning tales for the child by the fire. The old man had a large audience now. The two barbarians were listening, Tass noted. Then his jaw dropped. The woman had thrown her hood back, and the firelight shone on her face and hair. The Kenders stared in admiration. The woman's face was like the face of a marble statue. Classic, pure, cold. But it was her hair that captured the Kender's attention. Tass had never before seen such hair, especially on a plainsman, who were usually dark-skinned and dark-haired. No jeweler spinning molten strands of silver and gold could have created this effect of the woman's silver gold hair shining in the firelight. One other person listened to the old man. This was a man dressed in the rich brown and gold robes of a seeker. He sat at a small round table, drinking mulled wine. Several mugs stood before him, and even as the Kender watched, he called sourly for another one. That's Hedrick, Tika whispered as she passed the companion's table. The High Theocrat. The man called out again, glaring at Tika. She bustled quickly over to help him. He snarled at her, mentioning poor service. She seemed to start to reply sharply, but then bit her lip and kept silent. The old man came to the end of the table. Came to the end of his tale. The boy sighed. Are all your stories of the ancient gods true, old one? He asked curiously. Tasselhoff saw Hedrick frown. The Kender hoped he wouldn't bother the old man. Tass touched Tanis's arm to catch his attention, nodding his head toward the seeker with a look that meant there might be trouble. The friends turned. All were immediately overwhelmed by the beauty of the plainsman. They stared in silence. The old man's voice carried clearly over the drone of the other conversations in the common room. Indeed, my stories are all true, child. The old man looked directly at the woman and her tall skirt. Ask these two. They carry such stories in their hearts. Do you? The boy asked. The boy turned to the woman eagerly. Can you tell me a story? The woman shrank back into the shadows, her face filled with alarm as she noticed Tanis and his friends staring at her. The man drew near her protectively, his hand reaching for his weapon. He glowered at the group, especially the heavily armed warrior, Caraman. Nervous bastard, Caraman commented, his hand straying to his own sword. I can understand why, Sturm said. Guarding such a treasure, he is her bodyguard, by the way. I gathered from their conversation that she's some kind of royal personage in their village, though I imagine from the looks they exchanged that their relationship goes a bit further than that. The woman raised her hand in a gesture to protest. I'm sorry. The friends had to strain to hear her Low voice. I am not a teller of tales. I have not the art. She spoke in a common tongue, her accent thick. The child's eager face filled with disappointment. The old man patted him on the back, then looked directly into the woman's eyes. You may not be the teller of tales, he said pleasantly, but you are the singer of songs, aren't you, chieftain's daughter? Sing the child your song, Gold Moon. You know the one. From out of nowhere, apparently, a lute appeared in the old man's hand. He gave it to the woman, who stared at him in fear and astonishment. How do you know me, sir? She asked. That's not important, the old man smiled. Sing for us, chieftain's daughter. The woman took the lute in hand and trembled visibly. Her companions seemed to make a whispered protest, but she did not hear him. Her eyes were held fast by the glittering black eyes of the old man. Slowly, as if in a trance, she began to strum the lute. As the melancholy chords drifted throughout the common room, conversation ceased. Soon, everyone was watching her, but she did not notice. Gold Moon sang for the old man. Now, I'm not going to sing, but I'll try and do the accent, okay? The grasslands are endless, and summer sings on, and Gold Moon the princess loves a poor man's son. Her father is chieftain, makes long roads between them. The grasslands are endless, and summer sings on. The grasslands are waving, the sky's rim is gray. The chieftain sends river wind east and away to search for strong magic. At the lip of the morn, the grasslands are waving, the sky's rim is gray. O river wind, where have you gone? O river wind, autumn comes. I sit by river and look to sunrise, but sun rises over the mountains alone. The grasslands are fading. The summer wind dies. He comes back, the darkness, the stones in his eyes. He carries a blue staff, as bright as a glacier. The grasslands are fading, the summer wind dies. The grasslands are fragile, as yellow as flame. The chieftain makes mockery of Riverwind's claim. He orders the people to stone the young warrior. The grasslands are fragile, as yellow as flame. The grasslands has faded, and autumn is here. The girl joins her lover. The stone whistles near. The staff flares in blue light, and both of them vanish. The grasslands are faded, and autumn is here.